When American and Russian cosmonauts were put on the International Space Station at the same time, something interesting happened. They were all at least somewhat fluent in both English and Russian, so the use of both languages began to overlap and they would speak in a combination of them, naming it Runglish. This isn't the first case of English and Russian combining though. Russian immigrants created communities of Russian Americans where Runglish is spoken as an actual hybrid language today, most notably in Brighton Beach, New York. The economic crisis in southern Brooklyn caused by the Great Depression brought many immigrants to Brighton Beach to replace the wealthy tourists that once inhabited it. These immigrants were mostly from the USSR, and the neighborhood flowered into a new community. The case of Runglish is not too dissimilar from other cases of hybrid languages, however, some of which you may have heard of. A hybrid language is loosely defined as a mixed language resulting from the combination of two or more languages. This combination usually occurs when people who speak different languages come in contact with each other and their dialects combine over time, eventually developing a new hybrid language. Spanglish is possibly the most well-known hybrid language, given the popularity of both English and Spanish. It's so popular that there really isn't a distinct definition or set of rules for Spanglish. It's merely used to describe the combination of Spanish and English of any kind. This can be in the form of Spanish words being Englishized, like bizarro mean bizarre instead of the traditional estrambótico, or parquear meaning to park instead of estacionar, or English figures of speech translated into Spanish, it's up to you becoming está para arriba de ti, or vice versa, a buenas horas mangas verdes being 2 good hours greensleeves. Phrases like this aren't usually a translatable thing, but Spanglish begs to differ. Spanglish is estimated to be spoken by around 40 million people in the southern US states, New York, and Central America. It's become so ingrained in certain communities, it can be difficult to tell if speakers were originally English or Spanish speaking. Gotta be honest, I don't know how to pronounce this one, so I'm not even gonna say it. Sorry, I took Spanish in high school. It's a combination of Norwegian and Russian and is more accurately regarded as a pidgin, not a hybrid language. A pidgin is a restricted or simplified means of communication between two groups of people that develops most commonly for ease of trade. This is precisely why Russian and Norwegian were combined, because it was used by traders and fishermen near the Arctic in Russia and Norway respectively. It traces all the way back to 1785, and was used a lot for almost 150 years. But communication between the Norwegians and Russians was halted in 1917 when Finland declared independence from Russia, causing the Norway-Russia border to shrink. In 1919, it disappeared completely. It's too bad pen pal matching services weren't popular until the 1930s, so they couldn't even write to each other after the border was gone. Although it is no longer prevalent, it remains one of the most studied pidgins ever. English doesn't seem to have an exact origin story. It just describes the use of Yiddish words in English sentences and sentence structure. It mostly exists as a result of Yiddish speakers being in English-speaking countries. There really isn't a deep history to it. Writer Leo Roston mentions Yinglish in his book, The Joys of Yiddish, along with Ameridish, another English-Yiddish hybrid language. He describes Ameridish as words coined by Jews in the United States, which is different because these words are often a hybrid of English and Yiddish words themselves. Yinglish doesn't seem to be a super widespread hybrid language, almost only being used by Jewish people. It has been known to spread to non-Jewish people, however, that live in majority Jewish neighborhoods. A couple words have also become extremely widespread among English speakers such as shtick, schmuck, and chutzpah. These words became so popular that they are all officially part of the English dictionary. Portuñol is the name used to describe any hybrid language of Spanish and Portuguese, not any specific vernacular, similarly to Spanglish. And similarly to Russenorsk, if that's how you say it, it is regarded as a pidgin, used by Spanish or Portuguese speakers who may not be completely fluent in the other language to communicate with each other. It might be pretty obvious how it was developed, as there are many country borders that split Portuguese and Spanish speakers, and the languages themselves are already closely related. These borders include Spain and Portugal, of course, and the borders between Brazil and most of the neighboring countries. Because there are so many Spanish-Portuguese contact points, Portuñol is extremely diverse in how it is spoken. Thus why there are no clear rules that separate it from its original languages. Portuñol is not to be confused with Mirandese, which is a sparsely spoken Australeonese language in northeastern Portugal. It's sort of a combination of Spanish and Portuguese, but it appears to have evolved completely separately. Last but not least, Lichif is another fairly old hybrid language, dating back to the early 1800s as a combination of mainly Cree and Métis French. According to Wikipedia, everyone's favorite super accurate source, Michif takes noun phrase phonology, lexicon, morphology, articles, and adjectives from Métis French, and verb phrase phonology, lexicon, morphology, syntax, and demonstratives from Plains Cree. If you didn't understand what any of that meant, well, neither did I. It basically means that Michif is a very complicated hybrid language. Speakers of Michif are often people that are bilingual in French and Cree, because one cannot simply learn Michif with knowledge of only one root language. There was a great amount of spelling inconsistency in Michif too, because much of its lifetime was spent as an oral language, meaning it was only spoken and not really written. It was never a widespread language by any means, probably never reaching higher than 10,000 concurrent speakers, but it remains a very deeply studied hybrid language. It's too bad hybrid languages like cheese, German, and llama didn't make the cut. For every subscriber I get from this video, I will create another hybrid language.